Hi, this is Keith Farrow and welcome to another tutorial recording anyway. What we're going to be doing this evening is looking at the identification of the major types of termites that you will find as a pest manager. So those that do quite a significant amount of destruction in an urban environment, that is houses and structures around the urban areas. Now, this includes major cities, regional areas and country locations. It's not just the big cities. So it's certainly not every termite that you're going to come across. You will find others, but these are the ones that cause the most significant damage and the ones that you will find the most in those sort of locations. So let's have a go. I'm going to put the PowerPoint on. It is a PowerPoint. There'll be photographs you'll be able to see. Follow the cursor because it'll actually move around, discuss and look at the things and point to the things that I'm actually talking about. Okay, so here we go. I'll just start it up. Okay, so here we are. Timber pest, termite identification. So let's have a quick look at this. The termites types we're going to be looking at. Now, we won't get down to species. It's actually the genus name. So the termites have two names. You might have heard of Coptotermes acinaciformis. We're going to be looking at the Coptotermes as a group. And Shedderinotermes, Nashutotermes, Mastotermes, Heterotermes, Microceratermes, Porotermes, and Cryptotermes. So it's kind of handy. Everything ends in termes. So the industry would call them Coptos, Sheddos, Nashoots, Mastos, Heteros, Micros, Poros, and Cryptos, I guess. But you'll hear those terms used anyway. So let's go. Before we start to do the identification, we have to have a bit of an understanding as to the actual anatomy of the termite. Not a huge amount, but these are the things we're going to be looking at when we do the identification. And it's just of the soldier, by the way. We do not identify the termites from the worker or the queen or the king or the alates. We just use the soldier. So here's an idea of the soldier. And what we've got the front end and the back end here. These large bits here, they're the mandibles. Now, you'll find that we use the mandibles a lot in identification because they change from termite to termite. Behind the mandibles and on the front of the head, we have a thing called a labrum. And from time to time, the size and location of that actually get used inside the identification. That is all sitting on the head, which is behind that. And then behind the head, we have the thorax. And the first segment of the thorax is called the pronotum. And that becomes important sometimes in termite identification. Okay, so that's it. The mandibles, the labrum, the head, and the pronotum. Now, and I've got antenna here as well. They're not used in identification at the points we're going to be using it. So that's all that there is there. Okay, so now let's look at the first termite, and you need to understand that the worker is never used, and we're going to have a look at a worker. So here it is. This is a termite worker. And it doesn't matter about the species. Termite workers will be very, very similar right across all termites. Now, as you get used to termites, you will be able to pick up differences between the workers of the more common species you use or come across, but you won't use them for identification. You'll go, oh yeah, I think this is this because there's the worker. When you see the soldier, you will have confirmation. It is always going to be the soldier. But that's a worker termite. They're a beigey colour. There are no distinguishing features from one termite to the next that really come into the taxonomy or the identification of the termite. But that is a termite soldier. Now, our first termite, we're going to look at the Coptotermes, and it's across the board. So there are two photographs of the Coptotermes. This one here is a live termite, and this one here is dead, which is why the mandibles in this one are still touching like this, and this one they're crossed. When they die, oftentimes the actual mandibles will cross, so they're not like that in life. But here, the Coptotermes, you will see it's actually the head is sort of like a pear-shaped head or a teardrop or a seed type thing. Often called pear-shaped though, so it's wider at the back, quite round at the back, but quite wide, leading up to not a point, but a flat end at the front, and you can't see it here, but there's the labrum underneath. The mandibles in the Coptotermes are quite smooth. They're reasonably long and very smooth, and they're curved almost the full length of the Coptotermes. The mandibles are curved, which is why this picture's here. You can see that they're smooth and they're curved. So that's the Coptotermes. But the next thing with the Coptotermes is that here on their head, this point here and about this point here, they have, sorry about that. The termites, the soldier termites have a labrum, and the labrum is the point at which white fluid will come out when the termites are aggravated. So there's a small area here that when the termites are in defensive mode and they're aggravated, they will actually put this white goo out. It's a defensive mechanism. It's designed, it's called latex. We call it latex, but it goos up the attacker, usually ants, and it makes them sticky and they can't run away. So Coptotermes termites have that ability, and different species of Coptotermes will use more or less of it. And you'll get used to that in the areas you're working. So that's Coptotermes, the pear-shaped head, the curved, smooth mandibles, and the fontanelle with latex coming out. The next termite is going to be the Shedorhinotermes, and the photos aren't really good here, but you can see there's two termites in here, and these are both soldiers, because Shedorhinotermes have major and minor soldiers. The minor soldier is this one here, the little one, the minor there, and the major is the large one. Now, when the nest becomes mature, these two soldier types will appear in the colony, and you will see them. You'll see one coming out first and the other one, or both at the same time, but you will see there are two soldier types. In a young colony, before it's relatively mature, there's only one. And in a young colony, it's the minor soldier that is actually available, and the major ones aren't in existence yet. They only come along when the colony is relatively mature. So from time to time, you may see what looks to be Shedorhinotermes, but no major soldier. That's when you've got to have a look at the minor soldier. And what you're looking at here is the mandibles are curved, and in the minor soldier, the labrum extends almost the whole length of the curve. So the mandibles actually look like they're encasing the labrum on the front part of the minor soldier. And that will tell you, just in that the tiny soldier and that labrum or head shape and the mandible shape and the labrum will tell you that this is a Shedorhinotermes. Otherwise, the majority of the time, you'll be looking at a mature nest and you'll see both the major and the minor soldiers. Moving on, Nashutotermes. Now, this termite is very different. This is the soldier here, and you can see there are no mandibles on the soldier. It's a very distinct teardrop or pear-shaped or whatever type of head shape you want to give this, and it's very dark. They all have this dark shape. And they, at the very end of here, this is the end of their fontanelle, and what happens here, they exude white latex and push it out to gum up the attackers. They have a lot of this latex material, and there are also a lot of soldiers with this group of termites. Once you break open the galleries, the soldiers just rush out. There are more soldiers per capita in a Nashutotermes colony than any of the other termites, really. So they're quite large numbers, and you will see them. They really rush out, and they'll be having this white goo coming out the front. But they're very distinctive. That shape of the head and the no mandibles is very distinctive with the Nashutotermes. Now, this one here is the Mastotermes. Two things with the Mastotermes. One, it is only found north of the Tropic of Capricorn. Now, that doesn't mean a straight line, so if you're 10 kilometres north, you will find it. If you're 10 kilometres south, you won't. It's a wiggly line, but it's roughly the Tropic of Capricorn right from Queensland through to Western Australia. So tropical Queensland, North Queensland, Northern Territory and the top end of Western Australia get these termites. Now, the other thing about them is that they don't tend to be in the really wet areas. So if you're in Queensland, for instance, they're very rare or you just don't find them around Cairns, but you will in Townsville and up the Cape where it's much drier. And I haven't worked in Northern Territory, but I'm assuming that they're the same in Northern Territory. There will be areas that are really, really wet that they just don't go, and the drier areas they love and they get through. This is the masto. Now, the other thing about the Mastotermes, apart from its geographic location, is the size. These termites are truly big, and they're about 12 millimetres in length. They are large. The soldiers are large. The workers are large. So if you come across a big termite and you're north of the tropics and it's in a house or it's in a shed or it's anywhere around the yard, you are highly likely looking at a Mastotermes. And when I was working up in that area, carpenters would often ring you up and go, we want these things gone because they're biting me. They fall out of the ceiling and they're biting me on the back, and they do draw blood. So they don't sting you, they're just large enough to bite and cause a real problem. So Mastotermes, very big termite, very destructive, and are found north of that Tropic of Capricorn area in Australia. This one here, Heterotermes. It's not a huge termite, it's sort of average size, and like that 5 to 7 millimetres, a bit longer. And this one here is very distinguished or distinguishable by its head. It has an oblong or rectangular head. The mandibles are relatively straight and very long and just curve at the tip. So this termite, when you see it, you have this very box-shaped head, long, thin mandibles, just curved in at the tip. And that generally will tell you you've got a Heterotermes. The other thing about the Heterotermes is that they're not secretive. They'll actually walk up the side of the wall or the tree or whatever, or the fence or whatever else it is they're attacking. But the lead work that they create is quite delicate. It's very thin and just fits the termite through it. So it looks quite delicate when you see it, much more delicate than the Coptotermes and the Chedorhinotermes. So that's Heterotermes. They take an awful long time to eat anything as well. Now this one here is Microceratermes, and I do apologise about the photograph. It's difficult to get a photograph here. This one here, the head is quite damaged. It's usually a nice rectangular head, and this too has mandibles that are long, and these ones though are curved. And for Microceratermes, there are serrated teeth on the inside of the mandibles. That's why it's small ceratermes, serrations, small serrations on the inside of the mandibles. Now you'll need a lens to see them. They're very difficult to see with the naked eye, so you'll need a lens. But very distinctive about this termite is the nest. Now there are subterranean groups, and where the nest is below the ground, but there's also arboreal nests, and the arboreal nests are quite distinctive. Now they're not very large, and they're darkish in colour, but unlike the Machutatermes nest, which are in trees as well, these nests have these growths or inclusions on the bottom, and it looks like it's a dripping mud. They don't drip, but it looks like stalactites of mud coming off the bottom of the nest. So here we've got the termite nest, and as you can see, there's these stalactites of mud pack coming off the bottom, and it's very distinguishable. That will tell you you're dealing with Microceratermes, even if you haven't found the termite or can't see the serrations. The nest will tell you. Now this one here is Porotermes. Now Porotermes is a dampwood termite. So that means that it will only attack timber that is starting to decay or is decaying. So you'll find Porotermes in really damp areas or quite damp areas, and the timber has to be decayed. That's where they start. They can move into sound timber, but they don't start in sound timber, and they don't get along really well with it. The timber has to be really moist and decayed. Now the other thing about Porotermes is the soldier is as large as the Mastotermes. They are big, and they're about 12 millimetres long. So here is the soldier, and I think we'll go to the head. And there's two things about the soldier of the Porotermes. One, it's large, 12 millimetres long. Two, if you look here, they are eye spots. So this actually has light sense. So it has these two small residual eye spots on either side of the head, the soldiers do. And then with the mandibles, you'll see that the mandible on the left side and the mandible on the right-hand side are quite different. So they're not symmetrical. So the mandibles are different. There's 3 teeth on the left and only 2 on the right. So they're asymmetrical mandibles. And that's important. So when you've got the large termite with eye spots and these asymmetrical mandibles, you are dealing with porotermes. The clincher is it'll be in a wet, damp, decaying environment. Now these are quite common around Melbourne, and they're right up through the states, but they're very common around Melbourne and common inside houses where you've got close to the ground and really poor ventilation, or you've got a bathroom that's inundated all the time or something like that, where decay is going on. Now, the termite can nest inside the timber, so there doesn't have to be any ground contact with these things either. They can survive in the timber just by themselves without ground contact. And that's the porotermes. This one here is cryptotermes. Now, this is a drywood termite, exactly opposite to porotermes. The timber has to be dry. The environment usually has to sort of average quite a high humidity because they need relatively high humidity to work, but they cannot and don't work in damp, wet timber. Now, the soldier here is very distinctive. Notice here the mandibles are coming out at the base of the head. The head is very heavily sclerotized. There's a dark area at the front, and most species have this indeed, all that I've found have this. But it's very rare to find the soldier. There's very few inside a cryptotermes colony, very few, and when you see them, you're dead set lucky. What you will see, however, when you find cryptotermes is this stuff here. It's frass. Now, this termite works in isolated pieces of timber, so it can have its entire nest inside a stud in the wall or a piece of furniture, like a dresser drawer or a wardrobe. A chair even, or a table. It doesn't need to have ground contact. Indeed, it doesn't have ground contact at all. The whole nest and every part of the life cycle and every form of every cast of the termite is sitting inside the nest in an isolated piece of timber. Now, it can be a picture frame even. And these termites can move around just because people move house. So if you take the termite nest, if it's in a chair or a table, and you move the table to the new house, you've taken the colony with you. And that's how these things get around. I mean, they do swarm and they fly around, but they've moved around the world by hitching rides in furniture that goes away by boats. Indeed, the West Indian drywood termite came to Australia in army material during the Second World War. That's how it got into Queensland, up in Maryborough. And that's how it came to Sydney from Queensland, in furniture and picture frames. Now, Queensland has the most of these, the West Indian drywood termites, but all states can be prone to them, and Sydney's had them as well. But we have our native species, and they all do the same. You'll see these. It's the frass termite poo. When you open up the galleries of this termite, this frass will pour out, or you'll see it sitting at the bottom of the gallery. And the bottom picture here is just a close-up. This happens to be West Indian drywood termite frass, but that's a close-up of what the frass looks like. Hard capsules, looking like tiny wee little pips. They're quite small, but that's what they look like when you enlarge them, like put them under a magnifying glass. A specialist can actually tell you the species of termite just by this. You won't do that. You just need to know that says that it's drywood termites. And if you're worried, you send it off to the Department of Primary Industry or Quarantine to get them, or Forestry, to get them to check it out and make sure that you're not dealing with Cryptotermes brevis, the West Indian drywood termite, which is a quarantinable insect. So they are the Cryptotermes. Where do you find them? Well, these ones, you're going to find them in big, heavy timbers, posts, like structural posts underneath the floor of older houses. They'll get inside the stumps. They'll get inside heavy timbers where we've got cantilevered decks, those sorts of places. They're not really common, but they are there, and you will find them. Some areas they're more common than others, but you will find these from time to time. There's no ground contact. Don't try and treat the ground to stop these things. The nest is in the piece of timber that you're dealing with. Okay? So that's it. They're the termites. They're the major sorts of termites that you're going to come across, and that's the simplest way of doing identification. looking at the termite itself, the location, the mandibles, and a couple of other little features. But that's it. Okay, so I hope that's been good. Thank you very much for doing this, and we'll catch you again soon. Cheers. Bye.